Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones. Faulkner University announces a 60% tuition discount for members of the Church of Christ. Now, there are some guidelines. This 60% tuition reduction is applicable to adult undergraduate Bible degrees or graduate Bible degrees from the Curley Graduate School of Theology in the VP Black College of Biblical Studies. You must satisfy all admission requirements and maintain satisfactory academic progress. You must remain continuously enrolled, including summers, until the completion of the degree. You must provide a letter from an elder or minister, preferably on church letterhead, verifying that you're an active member of a Church of Christ congregation prior to your initial enrollment. This offer applies to adult undergraduate degrees such as biblical studies, youth and family ministry tracks, and it also includes graduate degrees. Those are the Master of Arts in Biblical Studies, the Master of Arts in Family Life Ministry, or a Master of Theology, and it also applies to the PhD in Biblical Studies. For undergraduate inquiries, please contact Adult Enrollment, 334-386-7140, 334-386-7140, or Adult Enrollment at Faulkner edu. That is Adult Enrollment at faulkner.edu. For graduate inquiries, please call 334-386-7539, 334-386-7539. Graduate enrollment at faulkner.edu. That is graduate enrollment at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. In using the term wrong, I don't mean morally wrong. In using the term wrong, I mean like maybe a little deception. Maybe the idea of age and treachery will beat youth and skill. But I was wrong. I was wrong, and I was first to admit it. What I was about to do was going to be wrong. It was wrong before I did it. It was wrong while I was doing it, and after all has been said and done, it it was still wrong. Now, again, this is not morally wrong. I was just using something that I knew about this person, and I took advantage of it. I was untrained. I didn't have any training. I hadn't ever been to an Aikido class. I had not been exposed to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I had a little experience with a guy in Salem, Arkansas, who taught Chinese Kempo. His name was Galen Gifford, and purportedly he had been the bodyguard for the rock band Crocus. I quit taking lessons from him when I discovered he didn't know how to grapple, because my only real experience with self-defense or anything was just wrestling. I'd done some catch wrestling. Now, my brother liked to box, but I was never any good at it. And then I imitated a lot of things I'd seen on Georgia Championship Wrestling. I had seen some martial arts in the form of David Carradine in a series that came on TV called Kung Fu. It was very bad, very slow motion Kung Fu. And I had seen Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee had portrayed in one of his early television exposures as the masked chauffeur of a guy named Kato, who was the sidekick of the Green Hornet. At that time, really the only thing I knew much about karate was a video game called Karate Champ. It's this really badly animated video game. You had these one-dimensional characters that would come out, and you had these two buttons and a joystick, and you could make them do all kind of moves, and they would punch and kick at each other, and then the little referee standing in the middle would raise a flag to one side or the other, and you'll point. This was basically based on the idea of the movie The Karate Kid, where we got to watch Daniel-san compete in the All Valley Karate Tournament and win and lose this movie based on scoring points against his nemesis. Well, this guy said he knew karate, and he probably knew some taekwondo. He was proud of the fact that he had a black belt. He would tell anybody who would listen that he'd won some tournaments. He'd won some trophies by executing his stylized forms. And for whatever reason on this occasion, he had something to prove. And I did not. He was dating one of the girls in my youth group, and we were at either a picnic or a cookout. And he decided he needed to give a demonstration. He needed to show his prowess with the martial arts. And apparently some of the teenage boys had told him that I liked to wrestle. And he had decided that he was going to make an example of me. And I didn't want to be made an example of. I really didn't want to do this at this point. Sunday afternoons, you come to my house, we wrestle all day. But this was a youth devotional. I was surrounded by a bunch of kids. The girls were there, the boys were there. But he was insistent. In truth, it would not have hurt me to, let this kid throw a couple of fancy kicks and take a dive and get beat up in a pseudo-friendly sparring match. But it was his attitude. And based on his attitudes, it turns out at the time, my de-escalation skills, my protestations and attempts to avoid a kerfuffle were going to be unnecessary. I made a decision right then, right there, that I'm about to feed this frog some BBs. Well, he came at me with a flurry of stylized attacks, and as Ray Stevens would say, and a barrage of judo chops and some very impressive high kicks. Well, I simply did a move that they called the helmet. I bent my arms at the elbows and folded them over my head and protected my face and my little pumpkin. And I waited till a pretty solid kick landed against my upper arm and shoulder. And at that point, I yelled, "Point!" And when I yelled, "Point!" Mr. Tournament Fighter reflexively began to celebrate, and as he jumped around with his hands in the air, I tackled him and held his face in the ground via a full Nelson until he promised me that he was through beating me up and that we could go in peace. Another boy from the youth group, Luke Bradford, lay on the ground beside this kid, stared him in the one eye you could see that wasn't in the dirt, and said, "Whoever you paid for them karate lessons stole your money." As the comedian once said, karate only works on dudes who do karate. The key to his demise was not my training, but his. I took advantage of what I thought would be a habit, And probably using the term inappropriately, I took advantage of a fixed pattern behavior. Now, some people call it muscle memory, but let's be clear, your muscles don't have memories. They only do what their brains tell them to do, and the learning and retention of motor skills, the things your muscles do, that learning and retention are primarily stored in the brain's nervous system, specifically in your motor cortex, your cerebellum, and your striatum. And that's according to Alexander Rothstein, who is an exercise physiologist. This thing that we call muscle memory, this thing that looks like automatic movement, is basically a pattern of movement that is learned through repetition, but the brain stores the memory, not the muscles. Really, probably what we should call it is neural adaptation. You have these repeated patterns of movement, and the more you repeat them, the smoother and more efficient you can execute them, and you can do them without the need for conscious thought. You learn and ingrain these movements based on this process called myelination. Every time you do something, dribble a basketball, shoot a basketball, throw a baseball, swing a tennis racket, every time you do a movement, your nerve endings get wrapped in this myelin sheathing, and that basically allows the brain and the nerve and the muscle to communicate more efficiently. And yet it enhances the speed and efficiency, not actually of the muscle movement, but of the neural signals. And those neural signals are responsible for our movement. And so what we call muscle memory is just this relationship between what the brain stores and how it remembers things. And those patterns can get ingrained, and you can learn good habits as well as you can learn bad habits. Really, repetition is not the key as much as repetition that is correct and quality, focused, and deliberate. When you do it that way, it becomes more effective and becomes more efficient. If you're doing the reps wrong, it doesn't do you any good, because you can build bad habits as well as you can build good habits. Poor practice will create poor performance. But what I was banking on was that I could use this pattern of behavior against this guy. I knew he was a tournament fighter. Now, probably a more detailed explanation would call it a fixed action pattern. A fixed action pattern is a highly stereotyped behavioral response triggered by a specific stimuli. Now, this is different than muscle memory. This is instinct. This is something that happens with animals. This is something that happens when you have a flinch reflex. This is something that happens to cause your eye to blink. This is what happens when you have a startle reflex. I really learned about it the first time from a guy named Mike Carter, and we were catching frogs in Indiana. He took this small gold hook, wrapped it in black thread, and attached it to a fishing line, and would wave it in front of a frog's face. And when the little fishing hook with black string wrapped around it lined up in front of the frog's nose and eye, bam, he'd strike and get it. I've shot frogs with a 22 rifle. I've shot frogs with a 22 pistol. There's that one unfortunate incident in Alexander City where I shot a frog with a 357 Magnum. I've caught them by hand. I've netted them. I've gigged them. I've used a Hawaiian pole spear, but I never caught one on a hook like you do a fish. Mike explained to me that frogs rely heavily on their vision to detect their prey. Now, what he didn't explain to me was there's this portion of a frog's brain. It's a large portion of that very small brain called the optic tectum. And it basically is this part of the frog's brain that is crucial for processing information and initiating the appropriate motor responses in order to capture prey. You have these specialized neurons, and they transmit the analysis of the visual information to the motor systems, forming a command releasing system and activate the motor pattern so the frog will catch flies. Basically, we call this a fixed action pattern. It is a rapid, automatic sequence of behaviors. And so when a frog is eating, that feeding behavior is largely governed by outside forces rather than internal factors like hunger or thought. It's why you can roll BBs to a frog and he'll eat every one of them. It's not that the frog likes BBs. It's not that the frog thinks BBs taste good. It's not even that the frog is being fooled to think BBs are something else. It's just when they get lined up with his nose and his eyes, he can't help himself. He just does what frogs do. Now, this reaction pattern, this fixed action pattern, works great with flies. A frog just sits on the bank. He doesn't have to think about things. He doesn't have to think, I'm hunting. He doesn't have to think, I'm hungry. He just sits on the bank and thinks about what frogs think about, which is probably not a lot. And then when something lines up with the nose and the eye, boom, he gets it. It's effortless, thoughtless work, and it works great if there are no hooks. Apparently, frogs exhibit a systemic insensitivity to the difference between fish hooks, flies, and BBs. Now, I didn't know all this theory when I decided to take advantage of the Karate Kid and go all Cobra Kai on him. I just knew that he'd been conditioned by tournaments, and he never messed with a guy who learned to cheat from watching tag team wrestling. I don't know if it's exact. I don't know if it's the exact same thing with us, but I know we swallow a lot of things that are rolled toward us just because the media, social media, friends, and others tell us that that's what we're supposed to do. That's how we're supposed to think, and that's how we're supposed to react. Whatever the process is, whether it's operant conditioning, fixed pattern behavior, whatever it is, I know it can be weaponized against us. You see, if I know this about you, if I know that if I do A, you will do B, then I can predict your reaction and plan my response to it, and I'm one or two moves ahead of you. For instance, my evil plan was I will yell point. He will celebrate. I will tackle him, and we've turned the All Valley Karate Tournament into a Georgia Championship loser leaves town, no hold barred, television time only wrestling match. And that's not what the Karate Kid had signed up for. A fixed action pattern is often what we think we're describing when we use the word triggered. An automatic response that we can't control to a specific stimulus. I do believe triggers exist in trauma. I do believe triggers exist in addiction. I do believe triggers exist in phobias, and I suspect they're probably present in other mental health conditions. What I don't believe is that they are true triggers. Now, they feel like they're automatic instinct level reactions over which we feel we have little or no governance, but in reality, they are not actually out of control. The feelings may be out of control, but our responsive to them should be controlled, and they are controllable. So when you talk about triggers in the sense that our popular society is using them, I'm not talking about out of control responses. I'm talking about non-controlled responses. We have the ability to control how we respond to the things that quote unquote trigger us. And just because we use the term trigger, all we're doing is abdicating self-control. The initial response, that initial fight, flight reaction, that initial intake of breath, that initial response may be a true trigger. We may not be able to control whether or not we're hit with sudden fear or anxiety, or maybe even dislike or hate or impulses for violence, avoidance, or even feeling powerless or victimized. May not be able to control that initial response, but we can control how we respond to those out of control responses. You see, if they truly could not be controlled, I feel this way and thus I have to act this way, then we couldn't be blamed for anything or held accountable because of them. Triggered and fixed pattern behavior is the opposite of self-regulation. As people, we get conditioned to fixed action patterns. We get conditioned by society telling us that things have to affect us in a specific way. We are told we have no choice. If someone disagrees with you, you must be offended. If they use this word, if they don't use this pronoun, if they like this or don't like this view, then we must be upset. We must be out of control, and we must act based on what others do rather than what I choose to do with how I feel at the moment. The feeling is not the problem. The problem is the reaction to the feeling. To say I'm triggered is simply to admit that I'm being controlled internally by an external stimuli. It's pretty much a myth, just like muscle memory. Your brain has to make the decision of how you respond. Your character has to make the decision of how you respond. Your self-discipline controls your responses to having responses that you can't control. Maybe there are things that happen and we can't help the fact that we feel mad or sad or scared or anxious. But I believe we have the ability to control how we respond to those feelings. I believe you can learn to be afraid, and believe you can learn to be unafraid. You can learn to remain calm. You can learn to be out of control and pitch a fit. Our society's been told if this happens, you have to pitch a fit. Protest. Maybe we could just learn to say, because I feel this way doesn't mean I have to act this way. I'm not talking about being false or duplicitous or putting on a false front. I'm just talking about living with self-control. Maybe a person can't help how they feel about certain things, situations, actions, or stimulus. Maybe we can't just decide. Maybe we can't really learn not to let this bother us, anger us, frighten us, traumatize us. But we can. We can, by repetition, practice, conditioning, learn not to give those things the permission or the power to overwhelm us and take control of us. We can also practice insight and thoughtful execution, and by using insight and thoughtful execution, change the way we respond to feelings that we may not be able to help feeling. Triggered, I believe the way it's being used in modern society is just a word for emotional, psychological muscle memory, or fixed pattern thinking, fixed pattern feeling, fixed pattern behavior. Whatever you want to call it, it's a code word in today's society that says I get to blame you, others, or them for how I react based on things that I can't control and I don't want to control my responses to. Triggered is the opposite of self-control. One is reactionary, the other is intentional. One is powerless, one is powerful. One is without thought, the other is thoughtful. Self-control is the opposite of being triggered. Now, we may not be able to change the way we feel. We can change the way we feel about the way we feel about something, and we can definitely change the way we deal with the way we feel. It's learning to distinguish between flies and hooks. It's being able to see that's a fly, that's a fish hook. It's being able to tell which fish hooks look like flies, and which flies have fish hooks in them, and which fish hooks have flies on them. Or learn that there are people who want us to think we have to respond to everything that looks like a fly and ignore the fact they've actually put a fish hook in it. If we let them dictate a fixed pattern response and tell us it's not our fault, we were triggered, then it's this behavior that becomes automatic. And it happens really, really fast. It really feels powerful. It really feels empowering. It's almost visceral, and it's false. Did you use the information, the incident, the statement, the actions or opinions of others to make a decision, or was your decision made for you because a fixed pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior was dictated to you because of how someone else said the information, incident, statement, action, or opinion were supposed to make you think, feel, or act? Frogs are insensitive to the difference between fish hooks, flies, and BBs. People can become insensitive to the difference between self-control and triggered. The distinction between fish hooks and flies is the difference between I caught something and I got caught. The distinction between self-control and triggered is one, I'm in control, and the other is I'm being controlled. To let other people dictate our fixed pattern behavior is a behavior pattern that needs to be fixed. The mission of Heritage Christian University is simple. They aim to advance the churches of Christ by equipping servants through undergraduate and graduate programs. Heritage Christian University produces effective communicators of the gospel, focusing on evangelism and a commitment to Scripture. Heritage Christian University is accredited by the Association for Biblical Higher Education and offers the following degrees: Associate of Arts in Biblical Studies, Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Studies, Master of Arts, Master of Ministry, and Master of Divinity. Since 1968, Heritage Christian University, formerly International Bible College, has offered affordable degrees in biblical studies, allowing graduates to thrive in their ministries without the burden of loan debt after graduation. For more information about Heritage Christian University, visit www.hcu.edu. That's 3 W's and a dot. hcu.edu. Heritage Christian University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707. 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3 W's and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the donate here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.